Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us. Well, tonight we start at court again to give you an update on the trial of Nathaniel Veltman, who is charged with killing a Muslim family in London. Plus, we're wrapping up our Heat Island series tonight. We'll show you the findings of just how hot it got for some Windsor families. And for residents living out in Leamington, treatment for cancer is coming much closer to home. Today was the third day of the Nathaniel Veltman trial. He's accused of driving a truck into a Muslim family in London and killing them. The jury here in Windsor heard testimony from an eyewitness today and saw video of Veltman being escorted into custody by police. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports, and a warning: some of these details may be disturbing to viewers.
This apartment building behind the hardware store overlooks the street where the Afzal family was walking in June of 2021. In court, Lindsay Marshall testified she was on her apartment balcony when the sound of an engine caught her attention. She told the jury that she watched as a black pickup truck mounted the sidewalk and sped up. She said she later discovered a group of people had been struck. Marshall's testimony built on an agreed statement of facts that the accused, Nathaniel Veltman, drove his pickup toward the Afzal family and accelerated without braking, hitting the family of 5 who were out for a walk. Yumna Afzal, her parents Medea Salman and Salman Afzal, and her grandmother Talat Afzal died. A young boy survived. Marshall testified she was in shock watching bystanders rush to the scene and an officer provide first aid. Once police taped off the scene, she said she walked to the intersection and voluntarily gave her statement to police. The jury has seen video of Veltman's arrest and a recording of a 911 call moments before where the accused is heard saying he did it on purpose. The jury was shown video of Veltman being taken into custody wearing long dark pants and a white t-shirt with a large cross. The officers who escorted Veltman into police custody also carried in a military-style helmet and body armor. Now, in that video, Veltman is heard telling officers that he had not been drinking in the last 24 hours or using drugs, and that he would like to speak with a lawyer. Veltman has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and terrorism-related charges. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor, Ontario.
It's data that's never been collected before. Over the summer, CBC News has been tracking the temperatures in people's homes across the country, including here in Windsor. We installed temperature and humidity sensors in some residences, and now we have the final results. The CBC's TJ Deere breaks those numbers down.
CBC News placed temperature tracking devices inside 10 Windsor homes. The data showed some sweltering results. Most areas were hotter inside compared to the temperature outside. Greg Walton's unit was the most extreme. Of the 58 days where temperature recordings were collected, July 29th is when it felt like the hottest in his apartment. Although the sensor said it was 29 degrees inside, the heat index made it feel like it was 33. The outside temperature that day was only 25. When Walton was shown the results, he was shocked.
It's so, like, this is honestly, like, I'm kind of like, wow. Like, so it's like if it's 26 outside, it's like 33 degrees inside, and I'm running fans, and it's still that much hotter, and it's still that much more humid, and it's just like, wow. The
indoor temperature never fell below 26 degrees in Walton's apartment. Experts say indoor temperatures above 26 can have consequences for your physical and mental health.
If your cardiovascular system is already impaired in some way, so someone who has heart failure, now you're adding on that extra stress, now you're increasing the risk for a cardiac event. And that's why we see a lot of people, the increased risks or the increased incidence of cardiac events during these heat waves or during these moments of high temperature.
People who already have underlying depression and anxiety, those conditions can get worse, can also lead to an increase in, actually a direct increase in suicidality. An increase in violence has been documented as well in the scientific literature, and a worsening of serious mental illness like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder.
Many of the Windsor residents we followed throughout the summer faced barriers to staying cool, even at night. Walton's landlord charges an extra $100 a month to use an air conditioner in his apartment, so he chose not to get one. Other companies, like Skyline Living, force tenants to remove their window units even if they live on the basement level. This came after a decision made in Toronto to remove window-mounted units where an improperly installed unit fell from the 8th floor of this building in 2019 and led to the death of a toddler. Skyline confirmed the decision to remove the units was tied to safety risks. In a statement to CBC News, they said they offer financial assistance for tenants to purchase air conditioners that are not window-mounted. The province's Residential Tenancies Act says that air conditioning is not a vital service and landlords aren't required to provide it. Although some legislation exists to keep long-term care homes cool, there are no provincial regulations mandating a maximum temperature in someone's home. But Ontario's housing minister says his predecessor recommended that oversight be changed.
We're seeing this, right, across the province, and it is something that we're seized with, and that is why Minister Clark brought forward the regulation that we had to have air conditioning in all of our rental housing stock.
In the meantime, Mississauga has a bylaw requiring landlords to make sure rental units can be cooled to a maximum of 26 degrees if possible, and Hamilton is exploring developing a similar bylaw. Windsor doesn't have a bylaw mandating a maximum temperature, causing one city councillor to promise action.
It's something that certainly, looking at this data and the good work that you guys have been doing, I'm going to explore, and one of the venues we can do that is through a council question. So I'm going to ask a council question to ask administration to report back on such a bylaw.
Experts are saying that air conditioning should be a human right, especially as global temperatures rise. For now, though, people like Walton will have to wait for politicians at the provincial and municipal levels to step up and introduce new legislation to keep people cool in their own homes. TJ Deere, CBC News, Windsor.
It can be a hike traveling from Leamington to Windsor, especially when you're doing it frequently for something like cancer treatments. But those services are being offered much closer to some patients' homes. Erie Shores Healthcare in Leamington unveiled its oncology and outpatient clinic today. Dale Molnar brings us the story.
Hi, John. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Wonderful.
81-year-old John Lonke of Kingsville has been living with cancer for 3 years. For most of that time, he's been forced to travel to Windsor for treatment. Just 2 months ago, a cancer clinic opened as a pilot project at Erie Shores Healthcare in Leamington. That has allowed Lonke to get his chemotherapy and immunotherapy treatments much closer to where he lives.
Between travel time and treatment time, it would basically take me about half a day. So to have the option to come to Erie Shores, which is 20 minutes from my home, is a real option for me. It saves me time. I can play golf in the morning and be here in the afternoon for my treatments.
And that's what is so important of having a community hospital, is that we're able to offer that care close to home so individuals have a quality of life, a shorter treatment plan, and have family here close by if they need it for travel, company, etc.
The clinic is a satellite operation coordinated through Windsor Regional Hospital's Cancer Center. Erie Shores Healthcare spent $250,000 to outfit the room on the ground floor, and it receives funding from the province on a per-patient basis. Having this space here in Leamington frees up space at the Regional Cancer Center in Windsor as well.
Absolutely. It's a health system approach, and we're good partners with Windsor Regional, and access and flow across Windsor-Essex County is important to both organizations, and we have a collaborative partnership, and I think it'll benefit everyone.
We need satellites like this, like the partnership with Erie Shores Healthcare, to provide expanded resources and care, especially in communities closer to where patients live. This helps us stay ahead of the curve. We know that incidences are going up. We don't want to fall behind. So by opening a center like this, it ensures that people will continue to have timely access to care.
The clinic can currently accommodate 5 patients per day, Tuesday through Friday, but there are plans to expand the service. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Leamington.
There are no longer any municipalities in Essex County that have a COVID-19 vaccine policy for employees. The town of Tecumseh was the last one to vote out the now suspended policy. Council made that decision last night. A staff report says they looked at provincial mandates and medical guidelines. They found early in the pandemic vaccination requirements were being upheld when challenged, but say that has since changed. And 2-dose policies have now been found unreasonable in many cases. The City of Windsor suspended its COVID vaccine policy in November of last year. A new report on the ways climate change threatens Ontario shows that extreme heat, increased flooding, and more frequent wildfires will affect everything from infrastructure to human health. The Ford government commissioned the report but kept it quiet for months. We got the details from our senior reporter at Queen's Park, Mike Crawley.
It's been a summer of at times extreme weather here in Ontario, with wildfire smoke blanketing huge swaths of the province and heavy rains repeatedly bringing flooding to communities. Plus, our planet endured its hottest month in recorded history. And now comes a warning that climate change threatens to bring extreme weather to Ontario even more often over the decades to come. It's in a report commissioned by the Ford government.
The report is meant to establish the baseline.
Al Douglas leads the team that researched the threats from climate change.
It will pose significant risks for all parts of the province and to all Ontarians.
The report does the best job that's been done to date, describing the impacts of climate change and extreme weather.
One of the starkest threats the report lays out, how often temperatures could hit 30 degrees and up. Southern Ontario typically gets around 16 extreme heat days each year. The report predicts within the lifetime of today's kids, that will soar to an average of about 60 days. Northern Ontario goes from 4 extreme heat days per year now to 35.
Whoa.
That threatens production of the food you eat.
Think about crops and livestock and fruits and vegetables and things like that. The extreme heat can have a significant impact on the yields that we have for those commodities.
What we aren't seeing is urgency on the part of the province to address these risks. That's really what concerns me.
The report was delivered to the Ford government in January. It sat on it until August, then posted it to the web with no public announcement, just as the Greenbelt controversy neared its peak.
I think the reason they're trying to hide it is because this government has ripped up all the plans to address the climate crisis in Ontario.
I think they just want this to go away. They want it to be ignored. They don't want people to think about it. They don't want it to be a public issue.
The Environment Minister was not available for an interview. His spokesperson says the government is working to identify more ways to prepare Ontario for the effects of climate change. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's Federal Housing Agency continues to sound the alarm about the shortage of homes in this country. In a new report released today, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says Canada will need to build an additional 3.5 million housing units by 2030. That's in order to return home prices to affordable levels. Those units are in addition to the 18 million homes already expected to be built during that time. CMHC uses home prices from 2004 as its baseline for affordability. At that time, an average household would have to spend 40 to 45% of its disposable income for the purchase of a home. Now it takes more than 60% on average. Canada's housing shortage is also preventing people from taking jobs in some communities, sometimes essential jobs. The government of Nova Scotia is facing that problem, but it's attempting a novel solution. CBC's Jean Laroche has that story.
The last guests checked out of this motel just weeks ago. These 18 rooms are being turned into studio apartments. That likely means tearing down some of the brick walls to create kitchens and living rooms, and that's going to take time.
We're optimistic that in July, August of next year that we'll be opening the doors to residents. I think it's important to keep in mind the shortage of construction workers across the province. We face that in the same way the private sector does, as well as escalating costs.
Although these are not temporary accommodations, the thinking is people who live here won't be staying all that long.
We expect that after a year or two they will move. If they've settled into the community, we'll find something else. That would be the expectation.
The plan is to install 6 modular townhouses on the land behind the hotel. All told, this is an almost $5 million project. All of it designed primarily to house staff at the nearby hospital or the care home on the other side of town. The incoming mayor is sold on the concept.
Unfortunately, at times it's closed, not so much for any other reason but lack of workers, and a lot of it has to do with the fact they just can't, like I said earlier, find a place to live, to move here, so they very well can't work here if they can't live here.
Rents will be scaled to income, so those making more will pay more, and if there's room for non-healthcare workers, they'll have a shot at living here too.
We certainly will not leave a unit vacant in the current housing shortage here in Lunenburg or anywhere else in the province.
Bishop says similar announcements are coming soon in other communities. Jean Laroche, CBC News, Lunenburg.
Well, we're midweek now, folks, which means it might be a little too early to start talking about the weekend forecast, but I can't help it. I've had a little peek and it looks like near perfect weather. We have more on that coming up. The CBC Tower camera gets the best views in the city, and it's managed to capture a new neighbor of ours. We noticed the squawking of a peregrine falcon outside in our parking lot, and sure enough, there it was, positioned between the CBC and the GM building in Detroit. And we like them because they're experts at controlling the pigeon population, so, you know, we can eat our lunches outside in peace, of course. Call it this time of year is peak hawk migration season. I know there are lots of birders flocking to Holiday Beach, and especially this weekend because the Festival of Hawks is on. If you're heading out to catch a peek of some raptors, what kind of weather are you in for?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we are looking at things getting, quite nice as we head towards the weekend. Maybe things change a little bit for the second half, but I think all in all, it's really going to be quite pleasant. It's more about, depending what time you're out, sometimes you're out really early, and you're going to need a few extra layers, just like the kids need heading to the bus stop, or if you're walking them to school in the morning, send them on their way with an extra sweater, light jacket. We're headed to a low, in the single digits, upper single digits, around 8 to 9, but even at 8 a.m., just 10 degrees. Hey, full on sunshine though. The winds, they'll back off a little bit from where they've been. So it's going to be a pleasant Thursday, and it's a pleasant Wednesday evening, but look at all those readings, the mid-teens to upper teens, running a few degrees below seasonal. Sure, we should be closer to around 22 for a daytime high. Seeing some of that cloud deck, some of the lower cloud in here too, so patchy fog, that risk. Looked like we had kind of the chance of an isolated shower or two. So far, nothing much developing, but no, an isolated shower this evening, not out of the question. I think we're going to stay dry. Broadening the perspective, so tonight we could take another look at what is Hurricane Lee, which is going to be passing, and tomorrow really having an impact as it moves just to the west of Bermuda. But all eyes on not only Atlantic Canada, but the northeastern U.S. Hurricane watch in place through Maine, portions of Maine. And I think we'll see Canadian Hurricane Center. They have another update coming tonight around 9. We'll start seeing things. New Brunswick, southwestern Nova Scotia probably get posted as it becomes post-tropical. It's going to broaden. It's going to weaken somewhat, but still we're looking at quite a storm headed that way. And primarily it's going to have an impact on Saturday, but even into Sunday, they'll still be feeling the effects. There you go, a few isolated showers around Leamington. The models want to pick that up. We'll see if it reaches the ground there, but the chances there. I showed you the clouds that are in place. And speaking of clouds, not many of those that we'll be dealing with as we get into the day tomorrow. So we're going to see a ridge of high pressure really giving us some very nice conditions for several days. So into the weekend, and then things just shift a little bit, okay? Overnight temperatures, I told you, some single digits coming our way. And then here we go into tomorrow, a high of 21, Friday, Saturday, around 23, closer to seasonal. There it is. And Sunday, some scattered showers likely developing, a little bit of extra cloud cover coming our way, and we keep that imbalance as we go into Monday, that instability in the atmosphere. But I think it's a pretty nice 5-day forecast, Meg.
Yeah, I will quote you there by saying, lots of nice weather for several days. I'm holding you to that.
Okay, all right, we'll start the count now.
Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, weeks ago, we saw headline after headline about the devastating fires in Yellowknife. Coming up, we have an update on how people are managing after returning home. The number of dead has risen dramatically in Libya after deadly flooding over the weekend. It happened after 2 dams broke during a huge storm, killing at least 5,100 people. And there are fears that number could double. Search and rescue teams are still finding victims in streets, buildings, and along the country's northeastern coast. At least 10,000 are still feared missing. Tens of thousands are homeless. Meantime, calls for help from the international community are being answered. Several countries have sent help, including Qatar, Turkey, and Italy. The UK announced $1 million emergency relief package, and the U.S. is coordinating with UN and Libyan authorities to send funds. Canada is monitoring the situation in Libya through U.S. and UK counterparts. It's been a week since Yellowknife residents started to return home after wildfires forced them to flee. Schools and hospitals have been busy ramping up preparations for their return. As Julia Wong shows us, they're still working on getting back to normal.
For Melody Shaw, it's been a journey to make it to the top of this playground mountain.
It's been a little bit cuckoo.
After weeks away, her family is back in Yellowknife and ready for a bit of normalcy.
I'm looking forward to it for sure. Getting back to work and going to school is super important, and we need a routine for sure.
At this Yellowknife school, crews are scrambling to finish laying down flooring before students come back Thursday, a project put on hold during the evacuation. They're also checking on air filters as smoke from nearby wildfires continues to hang over the northern capital.
We do have HEPA filters in pretty much all of the classrooms. We're going through trying to get filters changed with that and ordering new filters for them.
Build those relationships with their kids as soon as they come in.
On top of that, staff will be paying extra attention to how students may be feeling.
Right now we're just focusing on really having a calm, relaxing start.
What's really important is just to give the kids the space to talk about their own story.
And it's not just schools.
We're getting really close to our full service capacity.
At Yellowknife's hospital, more inpatient beds have opened, and the emergency room and pediatric units are up and running. But labor and delivery is still suspended, and patients sent to Alberta and BC need to be flown back.
What are the care needs of all of those people today? When is it safe in their medical trajectory to move them?
It's one of the more high-risk devices.
Staff have also been assessing equipment.
We did the preventive maintenance check on all the anesthesia machines because electromechanical devices do not like sitting unused for 3 weeks. We checked out all the dialysis machines.
Staffing levels are almost back to normal, but the hospital, normally bustling, is not quite there yet.
The halls are empty and people are not around, and so it's a little bit eerie sometimes.
It likely won't be eerie for too much longer. Officials say most services will be back up and running within 7 to 10 days, but it could be at least another 3 weeks before the hospital is completely back to normal. Julia Wong, CBC News, Yellowknife.
I thought I saw some big roosters at this year's Harrow Fair, but unfortunately, a Brazilian man has got our local farmers beat. Take a look at these giant Indian roosters bred by a Brazilian crop scientist. The stunning birds can reach heights equal to a 2-year-old child. Some families in the South American country raise them for food, but the scientists decided to think bigger and improve the roosters' genetics to create a meat production business. Now, it's a tradition that stretches back more than 2 decades and one that's brought loads of fun for generations of families in New Brunswick. Take a look at this corn maze created yearly with a new theme by the Hunter brothers. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.